I made a commitment that I would not ever attempt to impose my religious views on anyone else in terms of relates to this most unique question in all of humanity. When is there a human life in being? When does that occur? And so I'm not going to do that. And conversely, I find myself in a position, how do you say to now women who are in poverty that increasingly have no access to women's health care? How do you say, well, guess what? It's gone, it's gone. So that's the reason why I made the decision.
That was Joe Biden last night. The former vice president is insisting he did not flip sides on a controversial abortion ban for political reasons. The Hyde Amendment bans federal funds to pay for some abortions. Last week, Biden confirmed he supported the law, only to then oppose it days later. Now the 2020 candidate is facing criticism for flip-flopping on the issue. His critics include Michael Ware, the former director of faith outreach at Obama for America. Ware told the Washington Post, quote, Biden made a profound error in reversing his decades-long position supporting Hyde. And Michael Ware joins me now from Washington. Michael, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be with you.
So as we just heard, you believe Joe Biden's reversal on the Hyde Amendment was a, quote, profound error. Why do you consider it to be such a serious mistake?
Well, just to be clear, right, it's not just the former vice president's error. It's the error of all of the Democratic candidates. Vice President Biden had a different position at the beginning of last week than he did as the week went on. It's the wrong position politically because first, 49% of registered voters support Hyde compared to 32% who do not. So that's the first thing. This is going to turn away a lot of not just general election voters, but Democratic voters. 1 out of every 5 Democratic women support Hyde. 25% of moderates support Hyde. And so this is an electoral problem. But it's also a problem because this issue is one of the most tender and fractious issues that we have in American public life. And it has generally been good policy, good politics, and within the framework that the American people have to say, do you know what? We support the legal right to an abortion. We support Roe v. Wade, but we don't think taxpayers should be involved. We think that there should be reasonable restrictions. And unfortunately, Joe Biden, who had been at the center of American politics, successfully, I'd add, he did win 2 presidential elections on the ticket with Barack Obama, who also supported Hyde. Unfortunately, the pressures of an elitist Democratic primary have moved him in what I consider to be the wrong direction.
Well, in that same interview with the Washington Post, you also said that pressuring candidates to make a decision on abortion, quote, won't cause any policy outcomes because there is no policy outcome on getting this done. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I mean, and it's clear by how House Democrats are acting right now, is that they know that there's no pathway to repeal Hyde at this moment or in the foreseeable future with Republicans having control of the Senate. And so this is all posturing for activist groups' money and support that will not effectuate itself in policy. What it will do is turn off voters. What it will do is throw other Democratic priorities under the bus as we posture ourselves on, again, this policy that is not going to change in the near future.
Well, how do you think a moderate Democrat like Joe Biden should be handling the issue of abortion moving forward? Is it what you just spelled out a moment ago, essentially what we heard in previous elections?
Yeah, well, you know, it's amazing to have so many Democrats running and not one of them mentioning, in the context of this whole discussion, that when President Obama left office, the abortion rate in this country was the lowest it's been since Roe v. Wade. That is a mantle that Vice President Biden and, frankly, any other Democrat should be happy to uphold. Instead, they're falling over themselves to move to the hard left on this issue, when instead they should be saying, we're going to continue the policies of supporting maternal health, of prosecuting pregnancy discrimination in the workplace, of promoting paid leave, of promoting access to contraception that can help reduce the abortion rate in this country. Those are the kinds of messages they should have. And then, of course, as I addressed earlier, they should be sending the message to the American people that that they do think some restrictions are good, that restrictions on taxpayer funding for abortion are good. And that's the way to be in the center of where most Americans are, rather than going to the fringes.
Let me ask you about the topic of religion. It is becoming essentially a talking point in the 2020 Democratic primary. Today, for example, candidate Pete Buttigieg held a rally with religious leaders. The South Bend, Indiana mayor has repeatedly invoked his own faith on the trail. How are we seeing Democrats discuss religion differently this cycle than in the past?
Well, look, I think Democrats see who they're running against and understand that they don't need to be defensive about who has values in this election. They don't need to be defensive about who can claim a moral mantle. Democrats have a values message to send in this debate, and President Trump, frankly, is on extraordinarily weak ground when it comes to claiming to be a candidate with values and morals. And so I think we're seeing that in the campaigns from Mayor Pete Buttigieg, from Senator Elizabeth Warren, from Joe Biden. The important thing is that they don't undermine it by taking such extreme positions on issues like we're talking about today that matter to many people of faith. But like Pete did, speaking to the poor, speaking to voting rights, speaking to criminal justice reform, speaking to climate change. There are broad constituencies of faith voters who care about these issues, and Democrats can invite them to support their campaigns.
It'll be so interesting to hear if these issues are discussed on that debate stage and how it is that various candidates express themselves if they have time, considering how crowded the field is. All right.
It will be interesting.
All right. Michael Ware in Washington for us. Michael, thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks, Elaine.